we are one of the first people to hit the market, and we are also, today we would say that we are one of the leading 3D printed pattern providers in India.
The geometrical integrity of 3D printing parts are far superior to...
Then he came back to us and said, give me 5 patterns. Then we gave them 5 patterns and we shipped them. Eventually they came back to us and said, we will order 100 patterns from you. For the past 8.5 years, we have acquired lots of customers and we have still not lost a single customer.
With 3D printing for the foundry industry, what do you think the next milestone is? Like, where are we headed? What is the future about? Welcome everybody back to the Foundry Podcast. Today we find ourselves in Bangalore, with a company that is probably one of the first in India to venture into 3D printing and then, diversify completely into the foundry industry about 8.5 years ago. So allow me to welcome Kris.
Hi, welcome.
Great to have you on the show.
Great.
So Kris and his partner started about 8 years ago, I believe.
Correct.
Right, in a rented garage, and today they have this really good 5,000 square foot facility.
Correct, that's
so
right.
So you guys have really done something right.
Yes, we have been progressing steadily.
Right.
A couple of years in between, during COVID, we had some slow down.
Right.
But then we got it back again, and now we are doing full-fledged.
They're really doing some amazing stuff. Yeah. They're working with a lot of very big foundries. I can't take the names. Unfortunately, a lot of them have NDAs with you guys. So that's something that the audience will miss out. But you can take it from me. The technology is proven. What your guys doing are really amazing. And let's just talk about what we're allowed to.
Initially, when we started the company, we didn't know where to take 3D printing or additive manufacturing to. But one thing we were very clear, we don't consider ourselves as an additive manufacturing company. We consider ourselves as an engineering solutions provider.
Right.
Because our strength is in engineering, our strength is in B2B business.
So you and your partner have had about 40 years of experience in manufacturing in B2B.
Correct.
So I think that was like probably the next step that you
had.
All
over the world.
Right.
So I've worked in Southeast Asia, Far East, in Europe, in US, all over the world. We've had customers we have visited, and we have done this in the past. Right. Regular job. That I would call as Kris 1.0. Right. So
amazing. So Kris, tell us very quickly. You'll come here. You all started in 2016, right? What was the first year like for you?
The first year we made a lot of mistakes. We bought a printer. We started printing. And we made a lot of mistakes.
So you all just decided to buy a printer and you start off?
Yes.
Okay.
So what we are good at is we consider mistakes as learning opportunities, and we never make the same mistake twice.
Right.
So we would think that in the first 1 year, we probably made 95% of all the mistakes that we could make.
Okay.
Right, and then we learned a lot from that.
Right.
So from that we could figure out how to do applications for different industries.
For different industries. But you all were very clear about being into engineering, right?
Correct.
Right from the outset.
Engineering B2B has always been our focus.
Right. So let's go ahead. Fast forward the first year, you make 95% of your mistakes in that one very year.
Yes.
Right. I believe you told me you were making enclosures for machines and all sorts of.
So whatever business came to us, we went and met with some customers that we knew from our earlier lives, and we started finding out what we can do for them, and we started doing some printing.
Right.
And for one of our associates who still works with us, he's from the valve and pump industry.
So this was he got you all into the foundry.
Correct.
This was what year? This was what year?
This was in the first year, around 7 to 8 months down the lane.
Right.
He came to us and said we should go and talk to foundry guys. And then we initially said let's go to investment casting, basically because of a few different reasons.
Right, which we'll cover up very, very soon.
No, even before we go for the use cases, what we think is that the investment casting the business is slightly different from the sand casting business. This is the investment casting is primarily they do it for thin walls.
Okay.
For intricate parts.
Right.
And so it is a little bit more challenging industry, and we think that they will look at value better and there will be better adoption, and this is why we went into investment casting industry initially.
Correct. That's amazing. So let's fast forward to the first year. Y'all seen Mr. Mohan, I believe his name is.
Yeah, Mr. Mohan is the person who brought us into this.
And he was a prior associate from a past relationship.
Yeah. We have prior associate. He was actually my CEO's classmate, Padmanabhan's classmate in engineering.
Okay.
So we know him for about more than 40 years. We know him also.
Right.
And he's been a close family friend.
Right.
For all of us. And then so he came to us. He still works with us. He's our general manager.
Right.
So he's the one who brought us into this foundry industry and took us to meet some foundries.
And you started this process doing your first year meeting foundries, trying some
we
trials
started
with
this by meeting foundries. And then our first break came in 2017 February,
Okay.
when we were exhibiting. We took a booth in the IFEX show.
Okay, so that was when you actually got your first break.
Yes, that is when we got our first big break, we should
Right.
say.
So
Before
are we
that-
allowed to talk about your first customer who gave you the big break?
Yeah, I have already spoken with my customer and he's agreed that I can mention his name.
Right.
So we started.
That's good. So we are going to hear about the first customer that
Yes.
provided Stratnel their
Yes.
breakthrough into the foundry industry.
So we started first working with a company called Power Metal Tech.
Okay.
They are based in Pune. It's actually a captive foundry.
Right.
They make their own parts and they sell the final parts to the
Is this
customers.
Mr. Lalit Pawar?
Yeah, it's Mr. Lalit Power's company.
Okay.
But the person who came and met me first was Ash Power.
Right.
Ash is the one who takes care of all the technical part of the business. So he came and started talking to us, and then we gave them some samples and we worked with them to make the methoding good, to make sure that they produce successful products.
So how did you convince Mr. Power that whatever your guys were doing at the time was actually going to benefit them, was actually going to work? So what was that process like?
So Ash Power was already actively exploring 3D printed patterns.
Right.
So he was looking at both foam casting as well as investment casting, lost foam casting as well as investment casting. So we initially worked with him to supply him investment casting patterns, and he was very happy with the kind of results he got from our patterns. So then he started engaging with us actively,
Right.
and that gave us the ability to showcase our products, tell customers what our experiences are. We faced some difficulties because we could not mention customer names.
Correct.
So, but we still could show them what we have done and explain. We learned more jargon.
You had like some sort of proven record.
Right,
track
we
record.
had proven record and
Right.
we were much more confident.
Right.
So we initially went to Rajkot. Rajkot is a place where
Investment
the
casting hub.
huge amount of
Right.
investment casting factories are there, and then we started working with them. And
So
then
just off topic, how much you say would you say your market share is from Gujarat?
well, that is a difficult question to answer.
But it's a big
in
percentage.
each year it has been different.
Okay.
So
Because majority of investment casting foundries are in Gujarat.
yeah, but we also have customers, a lot of customers in Karnataka,
Okay.
in Tamil Nadu, in Maharashtra,
Right.
and in Gujarat.
Right.
But I would say from the numbers point of view, without looking at revenue share, if you look at the numbers point of view, I would say about 60 to 70% of our foundry customers are in Gujarat, and the rest are spread over these 4 states: Maharashtra,
Correct.
Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu. These
Correct.
are the primary areas we are focusing on.
Correct. So investment castings is the only foundry which you say that it 100% works for them.
Investment casting is place where we have been very successful.
The most successful.
We have been very successful. We have proven.
Right.
Our customers have very significant adoption.
Correct.
So this is the other issue we are very thankful for, which is that for the past 8.5 years, we have acquired lots of customers and we have still not lost a single customer. All these
Amazing.
customers come back to us for
That's very nice to hear.
repeat business. Yes.
So Kris, you already told us about how you got your start, right? The use cases are pending, right?
Yes.
I think let's just get into that.
Okay.
Because if you're saying that you've not lost a single customer in 8.5 years, what your guys must be delivering must be really, really good,
Yes.
right? You must be having a very solid product.
Yes.
So tell us, like, if I'm an investment casting foundry today
Yeah.
and I come to Stratnel,
Yes.
like, what exactly am I looking at you to solve for me?
Yes. So we very firmly believe that our success depends on customer success. So we work on customer success, and that does not necessarily mean customer happiness, because in the process of making a customer successful, sometimes we have made our customers unhappy initially,
Right.
because we ask too many questions. We
Right.
ask them, why do you use it for? What do you use it for? Some of the customers were not very happy with this approach, but then we eventually convinced them that this is to make them successful.
Right.
And sometimes we have even modified their designs and shown them that this is a better way for metal flow, and you'll be able to do
Okay,
better with
so
this
you not
kind of
only
thing.
so basically, I think it's an approach of allow me to help you, right? Help
Yes,
me help you,
yeah.
sort of
So
approach.
we are basically an engineering company. We understand customers' applications, and so we work with customers to make them successful. This is the only approach we have been taking across all the fields, including investment casting and our other applications that we work with other industries.
Right.
And we have always been successful in this approach, basically because in the long term, customers have found that we work for their benefit. Okay. Okay. Now I have to answer your question on use cases.
Correct. So if I'm an investment casting foundry and I come to you Stratnel Technologies, what exactly am I coming to it? What is my what can you do for me exactly?
Yes. So primarily there are some 5 or 6 different use cases for which customers come to us. The first and foremost that most customers understand very easily is for prototyping. Let us say their customers want to do prototyping of a new design and they want to make some 2 or 3 parts, 1 part, maybe 2 parts, something like that. It will be very expensive to make a die and take wax patterns out of that.
Okay.
So for in those kind of cases, 3D printed patterns work brilliantly.
You mean because of the speed?
No, because of the reason that they don't have to make a die, number one, and when they make a die, typically it takes about 3 to 4 weeks for them to get the first issue of the die, first version. Then they have to debug the die to make sure that the patterns are coming out correctly.
Correct.
So that takes another few weeks. Whereas if you order 3D printed patterns from us, we can ship within a few days, which means you can start production. After that, they have to start doing the manufacturing process. Depending on the foundry, the manufacturing process can take anywhere between 3 to 5 weeks.
3 to 5 weeks.
3 to 5 weeks.
Okay.
So that involves, they have to build a shell first, then they have to do pouring, then they have to break open the shell, they take the part out, they have to do fettling. There's quite a lot of processes
for investment castings.
For investment castings.
I believe there's also curing, drying. That's a very time-consuming process.
So after each layer of the shell, they have to cure it and dry it and then apply another shell. So it is a time-consuming process. But the biggest time saving they find is that for getting a pattern which they can start shelling, it takes very few days.
Correct.
Whereas we go the die route is going to take them a few weeks.
So what are some other sort of use cases, advantages to going with Stratnel?
Yes, I will come to that. So first one I told you is 3D printed patterns.
Right.
The second is several customers approach foundries for making a few number of parts, 5 parts or 10 parts, and foundries, investment casting foundries typically do not encourage this business because making a die is very expensive.
And a lot of brain has to go into designing the die.
The die, yes. Right. So it's a very, very involved process. Whereas with 3D printing, you just send us a 3D model, we can print the pattern and send it to you. You can start doing.
So you design these patterns completely for the customer?
No, we do not do any design. We do not have any in-house design group.
Okay.
The designs are all customers' designs.
Right.
So and the IP is with the customer.
Right.
We don't own any IP. From that point of view, we are what you could broadly call as a job shop.
Right.
So what we do is we take the customer designs, we make parts from that, and we ship the patterns to customers. This is how we work.
Right.
So the second use case I told you is for low volume manufacturing.
Right. For batch quantities.
For small batch quantities. The third very interesting use case that we found was what we call as for legacy spares. Legacy spares are for making spare parts for very old machinery.
Okay.
For example, we had one customer who was a pump maker. His customer is in the oil and gas industry, and they had supplied some pumps 20 years ago. Okay. And then when one of these pumps goes down, the pump manufacturer offers a new pump, which is a much more higher efficient pump with much less cost.
Instead of the spares.
The oil and gas company will not accept it.
Right.
Because for them to qualify a pump for fluid dynamics takes them 2 years. 1 to 2 years.
Okay.
So it's a very long time. They cannot simply introduce a new pump into the process. So they will always say, I want spares.
Right.
And these guys won't have the dies anymore because there's 20-year-old pumps.
Right.
So they give us the design and we make patterns for them. And then they cast it in a foundry and they supply it to the customer. Everybody on the line is happy.
Amazing.
This is a very interesting use case for.
So I have a lot of questions. How did these use cases come up? Like, did you I'm sure you were approached by a lot of foundries with different use cases, and that is how slowly you built your portfolio. Is that how the process went?
Yes. Each time a customer sends an inquiry to us, this is why we said that sometimes customers think that we are difficult to work with because we ask too many questions. We ask them, what is your use case? What is your application? What is the end product? How are you going to do this?
Right.
What will be your post-processing? So
Right.
we ask a lot of these questions so we understand customers' application and we try to help them. But in the process, it also helps us to understand the customer's application, and we go to other companies, similar companies like that. Then we went to some 4 or 5 other pump manufacturing companies who were doing prototyping as well as for legacy
Right.
space like this, and we were able to get some business from them. So,
Right.
so working with this helps both our investment casting customer as well as Stratnel to understand the application. And then we are not simply making one product and giving it to customer. We are giving a solution to the customer. This
Correct.
is what we consider to the most important thing.
Right.
This is where we think we deliver real value.
Right. So those are three use cases. Are there any more?
Yeah, sure. There are a few more use cases. The fourth
A few more use cases.
a couple of more use cases.
Okay.
there.
Let's hear it. Come on.
So the fourth use case is where if a cast part has a lot of overhangs, undercuts, and very intricate parts with very thin walls, sometimes it's very difficult to make a die. So sometimes what customers, they may have to do multiple dies and they have to make multiple parts and connect them together.
Correct.
So with 3D printing, any complex part is no problem. What we say is in 3D printing, complexity is a given, which means however complex your pattern may be, we can still make this pattern and we can 3D print the pattern and ship
Because
it.
it's completely like addition. Like you're just adding layers to the pattern, and any complex.
Correct.
Part
Any
is-
complex pattern, any shape,
Right.
we can make the
In
pattern.
fact, I think you would probably like welcome complex patterns as something.
Correct. Where complex patterns are a challenge, where it will be very difficult to make dies.
Right.
Of course, in the long run, for mass manufacturing, they do make dies. But then while they are doing this, they can still, for initial purposes, they can make 3D printed patterns
And get
supply
started
to the
immediately.
customer.
This goes back to your prototyping.
Yes.
Right.
The next use case is where I probably told you 4 use cases so
Right,
far.
right.
The fifth use case,
I'm counting.
the fifth use case is for something like this. You look at this pattern, for example.
Right.
This is a very long pattern.
Correct.
So my investment casting foundry customer already had a die for this.
Okay.
But what he could not get out of the wax pattern is the concentricity. For the circle, you look at this side and this side,
Right.
it has to be concentric and the same shape.
And even the wall thickness is actually pretty.
Wall
low.
thickness, most investment casting patterns have thin wall.
Right.
So it is possible with wax patterns. But here, the most important thing here is concentricity.
Right.
So for very long patterns, wax patterns may warp or bend because wax is not very rigid, and it's also very difficult to find concentricity on both sides.
Correct.
So what the customer told us initially was, I have a die, but I'm not getting good quality. So why don't you give me a few patterns? So he initially ordered for 1 pattern.
Right.
Then he came back to us and said, give me 5 patterns. Then we gave them 5 patterns and we shipped them. Eventually they came back to us and said, we will order 100 patterns from you. Then we asked them, why do you do this when you already have a die?
Right.
And that is when he explained, saying concentricity is quite difficult. And my end customer, he also liked your finish, which means he just needs to do less
Correct.
machining.
So let me just summarize. You're saying a investment casting foundry approached you. They had a die for the pattern, right? But they are still buying volumes from you.
Yes.
They're still buying 50, 100 pieces
Yes.
of patterns from you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Knowing very well that every pattern is an investment.
But this is driven by the end customer because he's seeing the advantage in this pattern.
Right.
It's not
But
just
it's
driven
also
by-
a very strong use case.
Yes, very strong use.
So that's about 5 use cases.
5
now,
use cases.
right? Are there any more?
Yes, there's probably one more use case.
I think if we allow Kris a chance, he can go for an hour more talking about use cases. That's really good. So 6 use cases.
I had 2 more.
You have 2 more. This is what I meant.
Okay, so in investment casting, typically when a customer gets a large order, before making a die, he wants to get his methoding correct.
Okay.
So to do the methoding, 3D printed pattern is a very good use case for doing, because it's like
Smaller
a drop-in.
investment.
It is like a drop-in replacement for a wax pattern.
Right.
You don't need to change any of your processes, and you get a nice cast part out.
I think this is probably the most powerful use case.
Yes, it's very powerful for foundries.
Because simulation is only, maybe it covers about 50%, 60%
Correct,
of the stuff.
correct,
But
correct.
if you can actually take a trial, get a sample in hand
Yes.
before you finalize your die.
Yes. This is the 5th one, okay?
Right.
The 6th one.
6th one.
Okay, the 7th and the last but not the least use case, okay,
Right.
is where what we call as for investment casting foundries, they use it for order conversion.
Okay.
So what order conversion really means is when they want to pursue a strategic customer or large volume customer,
I know what you
and
mean.
when
Right.
they get an inquiry from a customer, they order a pattern from us, a few patterns, 1 or 2 patterns, okay, and then they take the pattern, they cast them, and when they send the quote to the customer, they send a cast part along with
Right,
it
as a sample.
as a sample. Okay,
Proof
So-
of
no,
correct.
there are a few important learnings here, okay,
Right.
by talking to customers. What customers say is, when you send a actual cast part sample to the purchaser along with the RFQ, the purchaser doesn't know what to do with this pattern.
Exactly.
He sends it to the engineering guys.
Right, right.
The engineering guys start talking to the foundry.
Correct.
And then it becomes an engineering
relationship.
discussion,
Right.
not a price discussion.
Right.
Which means they're able to get higher margins with this.
Right. Right.
So
This is
there are-
actually very strong, and this is something that I used at my foundry. When customers used to send me drawings, I would directly, just cast a part immediately, although those are wooden patterns,
Yeah.
similarly practiced, and just deliver a finished product on the table, and then the discussion goes ahead. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
The
There's a
issue of
much
issue of
tighter engagement. when you do
exactly,
this.
the issue of competition doesn't even arise.
Yes, you have an edge over the competition.
Right.
Because you are able to show really the customer.
And a
what
very
the
small
product is.
percentage of foundries will be willing to go that extra mile.
Yes.
Right.
So we discuss these issues with some of our customers in Gujarat,
Right.
and they have been very active in doing this from over a period of time.
I mean, through the use cases that you just mentioned, a lot of investment casting foundries are going to, actively take up the tactics that you just mentioned. Considering that Kris is a salesman, right? You largely have been in sales your entire life.
Yes, correct.
So thank you for the really good tip.
Thank you very
people
much.
should note it down. That's really good. So do we have an 8th use case?
Pardon me?
Do we have an 8th use case?
And 8 use
Eight.
cases. No, the 7 use cases
You're
are what we.
done. 7 use cases, that's
Typically,
all.
when we go meet foundries in person and we talk to customers, this is what we explain to them. We explain to them, they ask us, why should I use this? This is more expensive than a wax pattern.
Exactly.
And we said, yes, if your customer wants to order 10,000 parts from you a month, it doesn't make sense for you to use a wax pattern.
Correct.
But if he orders 100 parts from you, 100 patterns from 100 parts from you,
Correct.
maybe making, in some cases, it is easy, it is less expensive to make the pattern than to make a die, really complex die and
Correct.
things like that.
Correct.
So there are many different use cases where it justifies to use 3D printed patterns.
Correct.
And to give you some idea, we have been doing investment casting patterns for the past 8.5 years, you said. We were not probably the very first person to do this. There have been some other people who have been doing this, but they have been using it more for in-house use. Additive manufacturing, they use 3D printing, then they sell cast parts.
Correct.
So as a pure play pattern vendor, we would say probably we are one of the first people to hit the market, and we are also, today we would say that we are one of the leading 3D printed pattern providers in India.
Right. And I completely believe that, because when I met you all guys, I think I met you recently at Interfoundry. But before that, I had seen you at IFX. I'm not sure whether it was the one in Gandhinagar or the one in Chennai.
Okay.
But I had come across Stratnel earlier. These are much before I was doing the Foundry Podcast. So you all have a very good presence. If you talk about 3D printing in the foundry industry, the only name that comes to mind is Stratnel for patterns. And that's something that you guys have really worked on and been successful with.
We are members of the IIF, the Indian Institute of Foundrymen, and we support them, and we go to most of the shows. In between, during COVID and some things like that, we couldn't go to some shows, but generally we are there in IFX shows. Yeah.
Right. So, Kris, tell us exactly what do your customers think of you? What do your customers think of Stratnel?
I told you right at the start, the last 8.5 years we have been acquiring customers in investment casting. Not a single customer has gone out from us. They all come back with repeat orders.
So you mean every single customer you have acquired, you've lost not a single one of them?
We have not lost a single one of them. They are all happy with the kind of value that we provide with our patterns.
Correct.
So this is what we think is a significant
That's really good.
achievement that we have done in the investment casting market.
Right. So that's really amazing. Thank you for your 8th use cases, I believe.
You're welcome.
Right. I'm sure if there are more, you can keep sending them to me, and I'll make sure that we can add them in the description.
When we talk to customers, we sometimes get more intelligence on why they are using it.
And that's how you're acquiring new use cases.
That is how we acquire use cases.
Right.
We are not foundry experts.
Correct.
We understand foundry and we solve problems, but we think that sometimes customers come and ask us, can we do this in some other metal like aluminum or copper one customer recently came to us and said he wanted to do in LTB, lead, tin, and bronze.
Yeah, that's my domain.
Okay, so we told him, as far as investment casting is concerned, we are metal agnostic.
Right.
For us, it doesn't matter to us what metal you use.
So the pattern completely melts away.
The pattern, actually, how the pattern does is the pattern burns away.
Okay.
So what they do is, after autoclave, they take this pattern and they fire the shell.
Okay.
At the time of firing the shell, we give them a recommended timing.
And the temperature as well.
And temperature.
Right.
But it is not holy Bible. It's not like you can only do it at this temperature. Different customers have different processes. Some of them fire at 1500 degrees for 1.5 hours. Some of them do it at 800 degrees for 3 hours. So depending on your shell firing process, we just tell you this is our recommended.
So roughly, what temperature does your 3D printed say your material melt at, or vaporize at?
The melting is totally melting. Melting is called heat deflection temperature.
Okay.
That really doesn't matter to here, because in the end, this whole thing has to burn away so that the cavity is created.
So at what temperature does the 3D printed pattern burn away?
We recommend 3 hours at 800 degrees.
3 hours at 800 degrees.
Yeah, the firing cycle.
Right.
But there are some customers of us, they do 1500 degrees for 1 hour. It works for them too.
Okay.
So it is not like some set value that you have to do.
Correct.
So we many times tell customers, if you want to try to fix your methoding process,
correct,
then we will give you samples.
Correct.
You use these samples, you try to burn them at different temperatures and see what works for you.
Right.
So we work very closely with customers to make sure that they fix their methoding and they fix their process so that they are successful.
That's good. Kris, thank you so much. Appreciate having you on the show. We are now going to be talking to your partner.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you for all the explaining, and I'm sure that Stratnel has a really long future ahead.
Thank you so much, Ian. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. So we're now here joined with Mr. Padmanabhan, right? Kris's partner. Padmanabhan, welcome.
Hey, nice
to
meeting
the show.
you.
Right? Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Pleasure.
We already heard from Kris a lot of the use cases for your technology, how you all got a little bit of your start. But I think you can elaborate a little further into, because you're handling the commercial side of things, you're CEO of Stratnel, correct? So how did you all get your start from your garage to here? Like, give us a little bit of your background.
See, I don't know how much Kris told you. We started this company sometime in 2016. So I come from a background of being in the manufacturing industry. So I've been tracking the additive manufacturing, which is actually not new. Most people think it's not new. It actually started sometime in the 80s. Okay, so it's got already 40 years in the marketplace. Only thing, the applications and some technologies evolving, applications happening. What really piqued my interest was the fact that in the early part of the evolution, this whole technology was controlled by a couple of companies, maybe 3 companies.
Correct.
So, and then all the technology was tied down to patents and new entrants were not there.
Right.
So many of the patents started expiring sometime in the second half of the first decade, 2007-8 started expiring.
There was not a lot of knowledge sharing, I believe, earlier.
Correct. So once when I started observing that technology becoming more and more open, I was getting very excited. But unfortunately, I couldn't use it in my earlier attempts. So when I was the CEO of a company called Interflex Electronics. So I quit the company in 2015 and so I said, okay, this looks very exciting. Let's go find out how to find industrial application for this.
Right.
So I partnered with Kris,
right,
and we kind of it is a good match between Kris and us because I come from more engineering, manufacturing, technology world, and Kris comes from the business development, go-to-market strategy kind of thing. So we thought it was a good fit.
So you all were both doing different parts of the equation.
Exactly.
I want to stop you for a second. How did you meet Kris? I think the audience deserves to know.
How did I meet Kris? I know Kris for a very long time, simply because we are brothers. So,
oh, you are brothers.
I mean, from biologically we are brothers.
But you never shared this with anyone before.
We haven't openly shared that before.
Okay.
So I don't mind. I mean, it's not a secret.
Right.
Nothing secret about
because
it.
Even I thought you all were partners. You all have different names. Right, as you mentioned you all use different names.
Yeah.
So when I finally asked you, and you broke the news out, and you said we're brothers.
Yeah.
It was really a shock to me.
So biologically you're brothers, but from early childhood you're more friends than brothers.
Correct.
So we share ideas and things like that. We kind of think more or less similar.
Right.
So as founders, we thought this will gel for 2 reasons. One is because we complement each other's strength and knowledge and capability.
Right. And you'll do actually, like from the meetings that I've had with you guys.
Yeah, and we also know that there is very little conflict in terms of thinking process because we have been thinking very similar. Our value systems are very similar and stuff like that. So we thought let's go make an attempt at doing a business out of this. So that's how this whole partnership started. And
that's amazing. So rapid prototyping 2016. Right, your start. What were some initial challenges that you all, had along the way at your maybe the first 2-3 years in business?
See, actually, we started working on many applications, and then we got introduced to the Foundry application through one of our friends. Probably Kris covered that earlier. Did he cover that?
Yeah.
Okay. So when we started working with Foundries, we went through quite a lot of challenges. At one level, it's a very straightforward application in the sense that technology is already proven. And then you have to apply it to the investment casting application. So at the entry level, it looked very simple.
Right.
But then as we started working and realized, we met challenge after challenge after challenge. So in retrospect, the whole thing was very, very clear to me, but it's not so clear. We started working on it. So now I know to have effective 3D printed patterns to be used in investment casting, we have to fulfill the basic requirements of the pattern. The basic requirements of patterns are the pattern finish and the dimensional stability has to be good. Both are very important, very obvious.
Right.
Okay, investment casting is all about finish, so finish has to be good. Dimensions have to be controlled.
Right.
Then we realize that because the pattern gets immersed inside a slurry, it also has to be watertight.
Correct.
Right, and there are cases in 3D printing where essentially 3D printing is a layer by layer thing.
Correct.
If a layer additions are not good enough, you could run into chances of the pattern leaking and the slurry getting inside the pattern.
Okay.
We saw that in the beginning.
Correct.
And we quite a bit of process modification we had to do to make sure to work out this problem.
Correct.
The other thing is about wettability. So these are the 3-4 requirements that you want to have the pattern to. So figure a little bit of thing.
All these challenges. Kris mentioned on the show that 95% of your problems that you all had were within the first 2-3 years.
Yes.
Right. So
yes, we are very lucky that we had customers who push us hard, and we are very lucky that we had customers who also had the patience to bear with us through our mistake-making process and perfecting this process.
Correct.
We are very grateful to all our early customers for having tolerated all the mistakes that we made.
Correct. And so, you guys have really been successful because coming from all the challenges that you all took head on to today, you all are doing really amazing, right? Moving from the garage to this 5,000 square foot facility that you all have. True. And I walked around the place. There are a lot of machines, a lot of activity. So that's really amazing. I wanted to ask you a little bit on some specific use cases, like you mentioned about this tube.
Interesting use
case. So there's a very funny, nice, very informative story that maybe helped you all with an application.
Yeah, I see that there are applications. When we started working on this, we did not realize that what are the different kind of applications. We kind of solved the technical side of the business, started working with customers. Customers started giving us business. Over the period, we kind of realized there are different use cases for the business, like Kris talked about prototyping or marketing and stuff like that.
Correct.
But then there was a pleasant surprise for us in this particular kind of component. We had a present case.
Correct.
Customer gave us one part, then he gave me 5 parts. Or sometimes he gave us some 15 parts. At one time, the customer came and ordered 50 parts for us.
50 of these.
50 of these. And I was quite surprised because I went to the customer and said, "Why would you 3D print 50 parts?" Because 3D printing is definitely not a very inexpensive process. So for the cost of half that quantity, they can build a mold.
Right.
They can build a die. They can make wax patterns. So why would they go down the 3D printing?
And I'm led to believe that they also had a die.
They also initially we didn't know they had a die. When I asked this question, customer told us, "Oh, we do have a die on this," but we find that the geometrical integrity of 3D printing parts are far superior to wax patterns come from the traditional dies.
Right.
So we discovered there are special cases that even though 3D printing may be more expensive than traditional die making and the traditional wax pattern route, and on a very niche cases, especially where you have high geometrical integrity requirements and complex shapes, 3D printing has a role to play. So, and this is a very present So price
So
for us
dimensional accuracy is what they were looking
more,
at.
I wouldn't call it dimensional. I'll call it more as a geometric integrity. For instance,
Okay.
if you have a part like this, or you have a turbo channel part like this,
Right.
How good is the geometry? In this case, both the flanges are either side. How good is the coaxiality is?
Correct.
How good the ovality of this is? What is the cylindricity of the part? These are the important characteristics. It goes a lot beyond just dimensions.
Correct.
So in those cases, 3D printed polymer patterns far outperform traditional wax patterns and complex shapes.
Correct. So which leads us on to our next topic. Today there are printers that print wax.
Yes,
Right?
true.
So what do you know about the technology, and what do you see that as a challenge, or how you
There are multiple technologies in 3D printing patterns. Everything has its own place.
Right.
Wax pattern is very good when it comes to finishing the pattern.
Correct.
Right. But it's got a limitation of shape, size, how much size you can go. Beyond a certain size, wax pattern comes with a limitation.
Right.
When I say wax patterns, we are talking about 3D printed wax pattern. Then you also have powder jet fusion. It comes with its own limitation. The process that we follow, we developed our own special raw materials for 3D printing polymer patterns, and then we developed our own processes and used specialized equipment ourselves. We kind of fine-tuned all this, and what we now think is that we overcome almost all the limitations. That means the pattern that we make, right, from a price perspective beats the other two technologies. From size perspective, we can definitely go much bigger in sizes. The largest pattern we have made so far was close to about 900 millimeter diameter.
900 mm in
900 millimeter diameter. The cast weight was close to some 840 kilos or something. That's a really massive pattern we made for customer.
What is the pattern of that size weigh? Like, what's the density difference between metal and plastic?
Interesting question. There is no direct correlation.
Okay.
Roughly the pattern, this will weigh definitely lighter than wax, because there are two things that happen here. Because when you make a wax pattern, the wax pattern is 100% same as the metal part.
Right. It's
whereas a 3D printed polymer pattern, you got empty gaps inside.
Right.
So the weight is far less than comparable wax pattern. And second thing is this material has got much better modulus of. Okay, let me not wait. It got better bending capabilities, or not bending capabilities, a lot more rigid.
Right.
So roughly speaking, the weight of the pattern would be anywhere between 10 to 30% of the weight of the.
Okay. So roughly about 10% of the casting weight would be your pattern.
Yeah, if you go on wax, probably this would have been close to 120 kilos or something. 3D printed pattern would have been 70, 80 kilos.
Okay, so that's another use case that I think Kris did not touch on. So far we have about 9 of them.
Yeah.
Right? That's a lot of use cases. Anyway, I wanted to ask you now, since 2016, you all guys come with 3D printing, you're always at the front of your game, right? So with additive manufacturing, with 3D printing for the foundry industry, what do you think the next milestone is? Like, where are we headed? What is the future about?
See, there are so many good things. Let me also really touch on a couple of not so good things in 3D printing, and that's where improvement is going to happen.
Right.
The speed of production is slowly increasing, right? And then we think over the next few years, this increase in production speed, which reduces lead time, would continue to happen at even at an accelerated rate. That means we can go a little bit faster deliveries to customers.
Like a couple of days earlier.
And things like that. The other thing that is happening is we can also address all these patterns involve fair amount of post processing after printing.
Okay.
Right now, most of the post processing are kind of labor intensive.
Right.
Now there are new techniques coming in, technologies
to achieve
coming.
The surface finish, you mean?
Surface finish.
Right.
It will be in a more automated way.
Right.
So that is the next step that's going to come. This will in turn translate to customers in terms of better lead time and better pricing, and hence higher adoption.
Correct.
So it's a win-win for everybody.
So the future looks bright for Stratnel.
Yes.
We
are very excited about the whole thing.
That's amazing. Would you also be able to touch a little bit about metal printing? Because is that something that you all guys are keeping a tab on? It's also upcoming.
Yes, metal printing is is developing very fast. That was a very expensive process. It's a very, very expensive process compared to traditional casting processes.
Right.
Again, the reasons are the equipment used is very expensive, and the raw material itself is very expensive, and it's a very slow process.
Correct.
Whatever we talked about polymer, similar applications, similar tendencies or technologies traits apply to metal 3D printing also.
So you mean it's very long, it's a very distant future ahead. So it's probably...
No, it's right now being used. I'm not saying it's right now being, in fact, there are rockets being launched with 3D printed engines now.
Right.
No, it's not far away. It's already there.
Okay.
But again, the mass adoption in a very, very niche field. Aerospace is one area we're prominently using it.
Correct.
But many times customers come and ask us about this. Hey, can you look at metal 3D printing? Because when you go investment casting route, or regular stand casting route, they think metal is a little bit easier, right? The answer to that question is no, it's not easier. It's far more difficult because if you're going into the production process through that, comparable to traditional process, a lot more expensive. There's no way you can compare cost on a mass market product. We had a use case where one of the engineering firms from Hyderabad came to us with product design for metal 3D printing.
Right.
So we said, why do you want to do metal 3D printing? Then we talked about what they were attempting to do. Essentially, they had some field issues for their customers where it's an off-road vehicle project, and they're combining multiple parts in one single part, and they thought combination of all these parts together, metal printing was the best way to go. We kind of talked to them after engaging with them. We kind of told them, look, yeah, true, the metal printing worked for you, but what if you look at investment casting? You're going metal route.
Right.
So in investment casting, anyway, you're not going into metal casting for your end use. So investment casting probably will take you closer to your final production process. So whatever prototyping, testing that you do, they become closer to real-time, real-life applications. Right. So there are cases. So we converted their opportunity for wanting to 3D print into investment casting.
Even Kris mentioned that you all guys spend a lot of time talking to customers, understanding their use case, understanding what their problem is.
Yes.
A lot of customers sometimes think that you're maybe prying into their business, but actually you have a lot of experience as to you speak to a lot of customers. So you can almost like tell them things that they don't know. You can almost educate them on how to make their process better.
We find, because we come from 30-40 years of manufacturing experience,
right,
and that experience is not just limited to manufacturing. We run businesses.
Correct.
We have seen product life management, PLM cycles we have seen. So typically when somebody comes to us and say, hey, we want to prototype this, they say, great, you're going to prototype this, we'll prototype, we'll be happy that you're coming to us, we'll help you with this.
Right.
But then in this particular design, these are the challenges you're going to see when you go into prototype, pilot production, mass production.
Correct.
Sometimes people come to us and show a product, we think, yeah, we can make the prototype, no problem, because 3D printing shape complexity is free.
Correct.
But if it's a mass market product, if you're going to make thousands of them, you won't be able to injection mold this.
Correct.
Right? So may I make a few suggestions here for you that we can come closer to your final stage?
Right.
So we come up with these kind of suggestions to the customer.
Right.
The reason we do this is we believe, both Kris and I, we believe that it's not enough to make customer happy. You got to make customer successful.
Right.
Right? End of the day, unless my customer business grows, my business cannot grow.
Right. Agreed.
We are in a B2B business.
100%.
So we are a lot more focused and making sure that we deliver best value to customers so that we accelerate the success rates. Mm-hmm. So this is one focused thing that there are also cases customers come to us and say, can you make this prototype or can you make this production? Sometimes we tell them that actually you don't need 3D printing. There are much less expensive, easier processes, faster processes. You can adopt those processes, and then at the cost of our own business, we redirect them to some other processes.
Correct.
It's mainly because we think end of the day, successful customer is a lot more important than the next billing I do.
Right.
So this is some of the principles that we use in business very successfully.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. It's been a
pleasure.
Great pleasure talking to you. I think you've really given us a lot of education as to what 3D printing can do for our industry. Right. Stratnel is really growing. So it's 100% proof. The proof is in the pudding that all guys are really helping foundries, plug their pattern needs in, and the 8 USPs that Kris spoke about. I want to ask you a last question before we wrap up. What is your goal and vision for Stratnel? Like, why do you all get up in the morning and maybe come to work, and what are you all trying to achieve here at Stratnel?
It excites us, really excites us. Kris might have told you that we started in a garage,
right?
And we had, I had one employee other than myself,
right?
And now we have grown to a fairly bigger operation thing.
Correct.
And our goal keeps shifting. So my first level of goal was I need to find some application with voice technology.
Right.
After we find one application, you say, how do we commercialize the application? So it's a never-ending thing.
Correct.
So we don't have a fixed goal. We have a rolling goal that keeps happening. So having said that, for the next couple of years, our goal would be, especially for investment casting foundry, is to increase speed of production and automate our finishing operations and
So it can be
deliver
cheaper.
more value for customers.
Right.
That's our near-time goal.
Right. That's amazing. Thank you, Mr. Padmanabhan. Where can the audience find you?
You can find us in our website. We have www.stratnel.com.
Right. It will probably be playing around here.
Sure, you can reach there, and then you can generate queries there. It also gives you email contacts there.
Right.
You automate your inquiry process. You can fill up forms, update files. You can
And to be mentioned, Stratnel Technologies is now on the Foundry shop, so you can also find their entire catalog. Right, everything they're doing. I think I'm working with Kris to make the store look really, really professional.
Sure, yeah.
To add all the new capabilities that you guys are constantly modifying. So that's something that's nice. So you can find their entire catalog on the Foundry shop. I'm also going to be flashing it here in the description below.
And we are also very happy to be part of this Foundry shop thing, because we find a lot of our customers will also be there. So it will be I think it's a triangular success story to develop for foundry suppliers and for Foundry shop. It will be a success triangle is what the way I see this. This going a big pyramid. And thank you for doing this work.
Thank you for trusting us. Thank you for being on the show. And,
My pleasure.
And thank you. All the best for Stratnel ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.